Hello again and welcome to the Stevenson's Gallery at the Museum of Scottish Lighthouses. So today we're going to do an additional video featuring this lamp beside me here. So you may remember a couple of weeks back we were canvassing your vote for the Wick Heritage Museum and their lens to be one of the Highlands' favourite object. Sadly the North Head lens only came second, but it was such a good effort that we thought we would do this video anyway to say thank you to all our friends out there for voting for our friends at Wick Heritage Museum. So what can we say about this lamp beside me today? Well, it's known as the Skerryvore Lamp, not necessarily because it came from Skerryvore, but because it features in Alan Stevenson's book the account of the Skerryvore Lighthouse. Indeed, Skerryvore had one of these installed in 1844 when it was first lit. So this one here, we don't really know where it came from. It's lost its provenance. I happen to think it was probably Sanda, mainly because when it arrived at the museum, it arrived with two different glass chimneys. So the one which it's wearing just now on top, you can see that's clear glass, but it also came with a red glass chimney which would produce a red light. And when Sanda was first lit in 1850, it was indeed a fixed red light. So these types of lamp, the real name is a mechanical lamp, and they were used mainly from Skerryvore in 1844 to around the mid 1850s. There are one or two later examples, but that's mainly when they're being made, when Alan Stevenson is engineer to the board. You'll see some of the classical features. So this one here is standing on bull's feet at the bottom, and if you look at the handles, they are being held in lions' heads, so they're actually in the lion's mouth. So it's very classical and very fancy, just as Alan Stevenson liked it really. So it's essentially an oil cistern made of copper, held within this very decorative brasswork. So the lamp itself is in three different parts. So at the very bottom you'll see we have the clockwork machine, and you might just see underneath it at the bottom there the weight. Above the clockwork machine, as we mentioned, is the cistern, and above that we have the pumps and the burner. So we'll go through the lamp in detail and I'll show you how it all worked. Right, so the first part of the lamp we'll talk about is down at the bottom, and this is the mechanical part of the lamp. This is the clockwork machine. So as we've seen at the very beginning of the video, it is a clock which is regulated by a dropping weight. So the weight is just beneath the clockwork in this recess here. So it's not moving just now, it's all disconnected, but what I'll do is I'll start the clock by putting the parts together. So I just need to flip the switch here, and you'll see it's come to life already. So I'll just let that take over. There we are. So you can hear that a bell is ringing. The purpose of the bell was to try and keep the keeper alert. Apart from the sound of the bell ringing, this makes no other noise. And the problem was, if this did stop working and the keeper didn't realise, what would happen is the mechanic would stop pumping the oil up to the burner and the light would go out, and that would lead to the keeper losing his job. So that's just there to help him keep alert through the night, to know that the pumps are working, supplying the burner with oil. Alan Stevenson did think about maybe removing the bell, just because he thought it was too much of a easy task to keep the keepers awake. They should be awake on their own accord, they shouldn't need a bell, he thought. But clearly he thought against it in the end, and the bell has remained in this machine. So as I speak, the weight's now pulling down on the machinery. So the weight would go down a tube underneath the lighthouse trim table, which is right underneath where the lamp would be, and depending on your apparatus it might go down for about a metre, perhaps slightly more if there's no machinery underneath. So for example, Skerryvore did have a clockwork machine, so that would have had a short wind, whereas if you think of Kinnaird Head, that didn't have a machine, it was a standing light, so it could go on for a bit longer. So generally speaking, you might need to wind the machinery every half an hour through the night. Again, failure to do that would result in the clockwork stopping and the oil not being pumped up to the lamp, meaning the light would go out. So it was very, very important he wound the machinery at regular intervals through the night time. So to do that, he has the winding handle. We have one here, so that would fit onto the machine. And he would wind the machine until he got the weight to the top of the tube again. So let's do that for you now. And there we are. So the weight's back at the top, and now that he's wound it, the machinery will start again. So we'll just stop the machine for the moment. It's very simple. There we are. So the next part of the lamp is fairly self-explanatory. This is the oil cistern where the fuel was kept to keep burning through the night. So from this angle you get a better appreciation of the classical features I spoke about earlier, with these handle rings through the lion's mouth. So when this lamp was first used in the 1840s, the lighthouse service was using coals oil, perhaps vegetable oil, rapeseed oil as it may be known today. So the oil was poured into the cistern through these recesses at the top here, so there's one at each side, and you would just get your oil in there to keep you going through the night. There is one clever part of the lamp, which I'll just show you just now. So whenever you put your oil into the lamp, there was a measuring stick attached to it. So inside the lamp there's an upside down cup, and whenever you put the oil in, it would start to float, and you can see, I'm not sure if you can, there we are, yeah, a measuring ruler would come up, and that would tell you exactly how much oil you had in the cistern through the night. So as you burn the oil, the rule would start to go down. So the rule is actually made of wood, so it's fairly lightweight, because remember it does need to float in the oil that's in there. We also have some handles. I'm not sure you can see those. I'll just open the other one. And the handles are fairly simply for removing the cistern for cleaning purposes. So that's fairly self-explanatory. That's all it really does. So we'll move on now to talk about the top part of the lamp, which is the pumps and the burner. Alright, so what we're looking at here is the pump part of the lamp. So this is really what the Clockwork machine is powering. So although it's down at the very bottom, there's a rod which extends all the way up through the cistern in a little tube, and that comes out over here. So this connects onto the pump action, which controls the oil supply. So I will restart the machine, and with any luck we'll start to see this part of the lamp start to function again. So let's turn it on. Right, so it's going a bit slow, but you'll see that the rod is starting to turn, and that in turn is moving around these two arms, which are moving the pump action in this part here. So the whole point of this part of the lamp was to provide a constant supply of oil up to the burners. There was also an overflow, so if it did provide too much, it would come back down again and be kept in the drip tray underneath and make its way back into the cistern. So I say it's a very clever way of doing it. So it's possible it would have been going a bit faster than this when it was working, but now being quite an age, we're quite happy that it's still going at this speed, as you can appreciate. So the oil, by the way, is being sucked up this pipe here. Actually, I'll just show you from this side. So that's in the centre there, and it goes all the way up to the burner, which we will now go on to talk about even. Right, so this is the last part of the lamp. This is the burner part, and you can see we have all these like screw things all the way around with numbers on them. These refer to the wicks in the burner. So this was the largest size of lamp you would find in the lighthouse at that point. It was a 5-wick lamp. So you can see the numbers, they relate to the individual wicks. So number 5 is the largest at the outside, going down to number 1 in the centre. And the point of this would be, as your wick was burning, you would need to raise it slightly higher each time to keep the flame going. So you can see that's wick 1. It would never be that high normally, but just as an example, as a turnip. So these are cylindrical wicks, which mean this is an adapted lamp for burning paraffin. So this part of the lamp, the burner, is actually not so old as the bottom part. This was probably put on here sometime in the mid 1870s, and indeed that corresponds with what we know about it, because on the underside of the lamp, the burner part, we have the maker's mark for Barbier and Fenestre. So they were around from the 1860s to the 1880s. So that fits in with what we know, because paraffin oil starts to be introduced in the early 1870s and is introduced quite quickly through the Scottish lighthouses. So here we have the chimney, so the glass chimney there. There was actually a drawing on the wall that was provided by the lighthouse service, each lighthouse, to show the keepers how high the flame had to be when it was burning for the most brilliant flame you could get. So they even had to get that right. So that's more or less how the lamp functions. The keeper would light the lamp up here, and you would have the flame in the middle, and this would be right in the centre of the lens. So as I've mentioned, these types of lamps, particularly the 4 or 5 wick ones, they were used with first order lenses. So you would expect lighthouses like Skerryvore, as I've mentioned, Sanda, as I believe this one came from, Kinnaird Head would have had one, and quite a few others. The mechanical lamps were used all the way through until the beginning of the 20th century. They weren't quite as fancy as this one I've shown you today. They were very plain, but they're used up until the introduction of the incandescent lamps in the first decade of the 20th century. So these kind of fall out of fashion 1905, 1906 onwards. So that's how all the parts of the lamp work. But as well as the fascinating mechanics of the lamp, it's also very rare these days. As far as we know, there's only 3 mechanical lamps from lighthouses and museums in Scotland today. So we have one here at Kinnaird Head, the Museum of Scottish Lighthouses in Fraserburgh. The Wick Heritage Museum, they have their one as part of the NOS assembly. But the last one's at the National Museum in Edinburgh, and those are the only 3 we know about in public hands. There are 2 others we're aware of, but they are held privately, and we don't know who has them. But they were sold at auction a few years ago, so they are out there somewhere. So that's the only 5 we know about. So I think you'll agree it's a highly specialised lamp, and being so rare, it's a gem to have in our collection. So we realise this video has gone on a bit longer than normal, but we hope you've enjoyed learning about how it all works and how all the parts work together. So thank you for watching.